Hey, I'm screenwriter, songwriter, and all around Canadian Tim Burns, and you are watching a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it.
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Since July of 2021, Jake and his friends have interviewed professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and many more. Who will they be chatting with in this week's interview? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Happy here with us, thank you for joining. Of course, I'm your host, Jake Deffinbaugh. With me today, of course, our co-hosts, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingel. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing good. Hello, everyone. How are you, Jake?
I'm doing great. Matt, thank you for asking.
That is-
And yes, I know you're about to bring this up, Chris. Today's episode, it's been a bit since we last time have a guest co-host joining us in this episode. A guest co-host that will be joining us for today in this special episode. Please welcome a good friend of ours. Please welcome Kev Messick. Happy to have you here.
Hey guys, happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Right,
Delighted to have
be
you.
here.
Delighted to have you here, Kev. So, Jake, who do we have for today?
Well, Chris, today's guest we have for today, he's a composer, musician, songwriter, photographer, a lot of things. A lot of you know his work in the Big Idea franchise for recording lots of songs for, everyone knows VeggieTales, including, of course, the classics. He's also a member of the band, Good Bellows, and a lot more they will touch base on throughout his career later on. Please welcome Mr. Kurt Heinecke. Happy to have you here, Kurt.
Good to be here.
Well, delighted to have you.
Yes.
Pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure is ours.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to have you here. So now, to kick things off, we know who you are, but for those who haven't, could you tell our audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Yep. I grew up in a musical family. I have two older brothers that are musicians. My parents were musicians, and so I always kind of grew up thinking I'm going to do music somehow, and I ended up okay, here's a little relational thing. I directed a German band in high school for 2 years. And when you think about the opening, the theme song of VeggieTales is a polka. And so I was like, oh, I got this. I know how to do this because I kind of knew German music. Ended up getting my music degree as a teacher from college. I was a music teacher and a band director for a couple of years. I ended up, while doing that, getting involved in a really cool contemporary church in downtown Chicago in the Lincoln Park area. And a lot of just vibrant activity going on there, a lot of contemporary music, a lot of talent, a lot of artists. And lo and behold, the founding members of VeggieTales, Mike and Phil and Lisa Vischer, who's Phil's wife, and some of the very first voice actors, Dan Anderson, who was Dad Asparagus, Kristen Blagan was the Laura the Carrot. All of them came out of this church, Park Community Church. And Phil had this idea for, Phil was in computer animation, Mike was in video editing, but together I just think it's hilarious. In college, they would get together. They were in a puppet troupe together, and but on the weekends they would get together and just over the weekend force themselves to write a music video. So they'd write a music video, produce it, sing it, act it, all within a weekend. And so that's where their creative craziness and genius, it's just kind of what they've been doing for decades. So they were interested in trying to do this VeggieTales idea. They didn't have the budget to say, hey, and they were unknowns at that point, so they weren't able to go down to Nashville and say, hey, let's get a real producer. And so they asked me, because I was directing music at the church every week. I was doing sequencing, I was leading a band, I was doing all sorts of stuff.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, this sounds interesting. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into, but Phil and Mike, especially Phil, was such a vision caster. You could see from the beginning, there's two layers to Phil. He's this crazy Bob the Tomato, but he's this intense businessman that wants to make an impact on the world through the Bible and faith. And so I was sold, and I said, yeah, let's, count me in. And so, I got started on it that summer, which was, that first episode came out in December of 93. So I was working on it that summer with them, and played the tuba on the theme song, did the did the original arrangement for the theme song. So did that for most of the next 25 years as director of music. And since then, in these last 10 or 12, I've lost track years, I'm still doing very similar things. I've got a studio here at my house. I write music, score, composition, songs for a lot of different, often faith-based projects. I wrote the score for the Superbook series from CBN for 5 seasons. I'm currently writing the score and the music director for the Wing Feather Saga under Andrew Peterson and that book series. Done a bunch of other stuff, and currently Mike Naraki and Steve Taylor have created the first season of the Dead Sea Squirrels. You heard that right. It's not the Scrolls, it's the Dead Sea Squirrels. Mm-hmm. And which is a hilarious faith-based animated series. And we're working on getting distribution for that this year, but the first season is already done. When that comes out, just keep your ears open, because if you like the sensibilities of VeggieTales, this comes from the writing of Larry the Cucumber. It has the same DNA. It feels similar, but it's a completely different story, completely different characters, completely different animation style. But I'm still working on the music and the score, and it's great to be back with him. And
nice.
And Phil and Mike and
I've read the Dead Sea Squirrel books. They're fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, it sounds like it's really fun. Definitely looking forward to that.
We've had some people that are kind of in the know say, pull Mike's head, like, I like this better than VeggieTales. So it's really creative. It's really good.
Nice. So kind of going back to like before you got into the music biz, like what was your childhood like? Good childhood. My mom was a choir director in the Lutheran church and a church organist and a piano teacher. My dad played cello and sang in the choir. I grew up in a good Midwestern family. We camped a lot, had a good, nothing too crazy. I kind of stayed out of trouble for the most part. We moved that was in Wisconsin. We moved to Alabama when I was in junior high. And that's where I really found my core group of friends once I got into high school and high school band and kind of the nerds. I was a trumpet player. That was a big part of my life. And then, just staying involved in the Lutheran church of my family, but then also all my friends were at the local Baptist church, were, down in Alabama. They had a big music program. So I got involved in the youth music program there. So had a really good mixture of, I guess you could say, different denominations as I was learning more about my faith. And so I really appreciate that from my parents, and then just everything that I gathered from my friends and those influences. And so, I'd say a pretty nerdy, uneventful childhood.
Yeah, you said you stayed out of trouble a lot, and I mean, who would have thought it? This nerdy kid into polka music would stay out of trouble,
Right. I mean,
Right?
I can't find any trouble even if I try.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what about all that made you want to have a career doing music?
I had seen as I had mentioned, my whole family were musicians or teachers. Both my older brothers were music teachers at one point. I knew I wanted to go into music in about junior high. It was either that or herpetology, which is the study of reptiles and amphibians. I had a turtle collection. I had turtles, but then I by junior high, I was like, yeah, I want to do something with music. And I was just very practical. I knew I wasn't good enough to be a studio musician or a symphony player. So I thought, I'll be a music teacher and get my degree for that, because I knew there would be work there. And I knew I could always still do all my other music. And that's basically exactly what happened. I was music teacher for several years and then transitioned over to working at the church. Actually, I didn't mention that before. I was a director of church music for 8 years, where I was kind of combining all these different skill sets, because I was a trumpet player, but I was a singer. I was dabbling in keyboards and synthesizers and sequencing, and I got to use all of those tools along with leading a choir and a band and leading worship and those sorts of things. So yeah, it was just always kind of, yeah, I'm just gonna do that. And I think I never had, I mean, I was always interested in arranging. I started arranging in junior high, just dabbling in it. And then as I was working at the church, there was a lot of opportunities to arrange. I never in a million years thought, oh, I'm gonna be a songwriter and be a composer, write film scores and those sorts of things. It's just not something that back then there's no path for that. You just don't go to college and get a degree in film composition. And it's one of those fields where even if you did have that, it's such a weird thing to get into. So much of it has to do with knowing the right people and being in the right place at the right time and having a bunch of skills that all kind of are intertwined but might be different skills. So it never was a life goal of mine to write music for vegetables, but that door opened and I jumped at the opportunity.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Very nice. So early on in your career, you got to teach general music in the Bahamas. What were those experiences like?
Somebody's been Wikipediaing me.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that was, I came out of college mid-semester, meaning, or mid-year, December, and there's just not a lot of teaching jobs open. And our college had a connection with a school in Freeport, Grand Bahama. And they said, hey, they're looking for a music teacher. And I was just crazy enough to say, hey, I'm not tied down to anything here. Why not? And so I was a general music teacher in Freeport, Grand Bahama for 6 months. It was an amazing experience. It wasn't exactly what I was cut out to do. I wasn't really set up to be an elementary music teacher. Ironically, now 2 of my 3 kids are elementary music teachers. So, they'll hear stories from my experience and that sort of stuff. But I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was a fantastic opportunity. I basically lived on a bay on the ocean, and I could ride my bike to the largest scuba dive center in the Bahamas. And I had a dive package. So I'd like go scuba diving every weekend or go snorkeling with friends on a catamaran. And yeah, it was pretty cool. But at the same time, I was ready to like move on. You kind of get cabin fever because there's just not a lot of outside influences and stuff. So after 6 months, well, actually what happened is there was an opportunity that came up in Chicago as a band director. And I had always thought Chicago was like the coolest city. And so suburbs of Chicago. So when that opportunity opened up, I was like, oh, that's exactly, right for me to get close to a big city like that. So yeah, so I took that step.
That's awesome. So for many, many years, like 25 years, you were, you worked for Big Idea as a music director and songwriter and all that. And you sort of touched on it at the beginning, but what was it like, when you first started working with them, meeting Phil, Mike, and Lisa and all that?
Yes, it really started out, Phil, you think back to Where's God When I'm Scared?
Yes.
Phil wrote, that was really
Classic.
mostly
Love that
Phil's
song.
writing. You think about some of those great songs. I Am King Darius, I Have a Dream, da, 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 and we, that contrapuntal weaving in and out. Phil had all that in his head. So at that point, I was really an arranger. The cool thing about Mike and Phil is neither of them are a classically trained musician. Phil is a little bit more. He can play some guitar. He can definitely play some keyboards, and he's a decent singer. But they have these amazing hooks that they come up with. So, the Hairbrush Song. Oh, where
Oh,
is my
yeah.
hairbrush? Well, da, 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 da,
Another
da, da,
classic
is my
song.
hairbrush?
Yes.
That is what Mike came up with. That's all that Mike had, and the lyrics and the story.
Right.
Then I took that and crafted this little operetta around it. And actually, that's an interesting one. Granted, that was who knows which show that came off of.
Are You My Neighbor?
Yeah, it's show 3, because show 1 was Water Buffalo Song, which was Phil's really one and only silly song by himself. Show 2, we had Trick Question. What was the silly song for show 2?
None.
None. Yeah, because we didn't know we were supposed to do.
Forgive-O-Matic, sort of.
Well, yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was the intermission little comedy bit. It was a commercial.
Yeah.
But at that point, we didn't know we were supposed to do silly songs every show until parents wrote in, "Where's the silly song?" We're like, we didn't know we had to write one. And so then show 3, Mike wrote Hairbrush Song. The interesting thing is I wrote all those little da 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 bum bum da 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 da. And it was Lisa in the studio that said, "Wait a minute, instead of Junior just going, 'Why do you need a hairbrush? You don't have any hair.' I think I could sing to what Kurt did. 'Why do you need a hairbrush? You don't have any hair.'" And I wasn't even in the studio on that day because I was still working at the church. So Lisa started crafting all these little lines between each of these choruses. So that one really was Mike and then myself and Lisa together writing that one. So all of that to say, back at the beginning, I was doing more arranging. Really on show 1, Phil had written all that music and I was arranging it and tightening it up, making a song out of it and that sort of stuff. And then as we got further down the series, then as Mike started picking up silly songs, I would start co-writing those with him. He still, no doubt about it, he always had the nugget, he had the idea, he had the craziness. It was my task to say, okay, how do we tie this up in a good song? Or how do we, maybe he hasn't, I'm always looking for that hook, and he has it in there twice. I'm like, no, let's repeat it again at the end, and let's build a chorus, and now we need a bridge, and now let's come back to this. One of the classic examples that I like to tell is Cheeseburger. His Cheeseburger.
That's
Mike
one of
had
my
written-
favorites.
Mike had written a different verse to it, and Lisa, his wife, who was Colombian, said, "Mike, you can't use that verse because you're copying the theme song to a Spanish soap opera I've been watching." Mike is just a sponge that way. He picks up on things. And so, we couldn't use that because it was already a song. So I rewrote the verses. He said, da 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 da, but you might da 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 dee dee. And then we use his chorus. And then you take pieces like SUV, sports utility vehicle, just the way that builds, Mike knew it wanted to build, but he didn't know musically how we would make that happen. So that's where the fun challenges come in for me. Or for yodeling veterinarian of the Alps, it starts with this vocal men's quartet that is very similar to something you'd hear in the 70s. There used to be these guys, vocal groups, folk guitar and singing. And he said, I want it to start like that, but then I want it to zip over to a yodeling polka. And I'm like, well, nobody's ever done that before. So it's fun to take these just counterintuitive ideas that Mike will just come up with, not thinking about, will it even work musically? And then going, okay, how do I capture Mike's vision and make it into a song that fits into, a 2-minute song, a 3-minute song with a good start, middle, and end, and that sort of thing.
Nice.
Wonderful. So now I'm kind of curious, even though we kind of touched base a little tiny bit, but overall, are there any songs you wrote for VeggieTales that kind of stick out as some of your favorites?
Oh gosh. You know what? I really like Belly Button. I think
Yeah, that's a funny
I
one.
love that one.
That's a
It's a great
fun
Oh,
one.
one.
great.
I just think that is, we did such a fun job of poking fun at boys groups and
Yeah.
boy bands. And I remember borrowing my, at the time we had our daughter Gretchen, who was probably 3, and I borrowed her babysitter's boy band CDs to listen to all of them, because that's kind of where I'm the one going, okay, what makes a boy band sound like a boy band song? So I'm listening to the instruments used, I'm listening to the tempo and the chord changes and the melody. I'm listening to how do the vocal parts interweave. So I'm really studying it. I'm not looking at this as, hey, we're just writing a kid song. It's like, no, we're going to write a legit boy band song. Okay, here's philosophically, my role has been in a typical silly song. I write a very legit song. Hairbrush Song is a little opera.
Yes.
Endangered Love is a tango.
Yep. Love that one too.
Belly Button is a boy band song. So I'm writing a serious, legit song. Larry is singing it seriously and legitimately. And that's where the humor comes in, because we see the craziness of this that he doesn't even see. And then I'm trying to write not a children's song, but this fully produced tango or boy band song or classical music or polka that can stand alone as that style song. And I think, and over the years, I've heard people say that's what they appreciate about it. It's not just, we won't mention names of any purple dinosaurs, but people will say, oh, I'm so glad it's not music like that. There's levels to it that me as a parent or as an adult can enjoy or dig into, or we catch things that we didn't hear earlier. Like any of the Christmas shows you watch, I probably slip in 20 Christmas carols into the score, just in and out all over the place, that those sorts of things. The beginning of is it Dave in the Giant Pickle, where he's starting with, he's the shepherd and the sheep are
Yeah.
so that little theme as the sheep are jumping around, that is Bach's Sheep May Safely Graze. So there might be, 1 in 1,000 classically trained musicians that catch that reference, because there's sheep on the screen. I'm referencing Bach's Sheep May Safely Graze. So I'm kind of doing that for myself, just to make it interesting. And I know that my musical family, they'll get that. So I'm kind of like playing to them or those sorts of people.
And speaking of the sheep, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but we are speaking to the voice of sheep number 3 from A Very Veggie Christmas.
Yes.
Probably my favorite VeggieTales character.
Right, hold it. Let's see if I can. There we go.
Wow.
Wait, boy,
Thank you.
Gotta have a drink after that. Wore me out.
There are times that you actually kind of like voice of like a couple like characters like just rarely. That's kind of cool.
I did a lot of background group character voices, background vocal parts on a singing
if
part.
it needs to,
like ADR.
Yeah, I mean, probably, because that's inevitably some kid asks, "Oh, are you a voice?" And like, nope, sorry, kid. But my claim to fame is I am the tuba player on the theme song, and here is that tuba. Right there.
Wow! That's awesome.
There's a little bit of trivia there. That is the second tuba. There's 2 theme songs. The first one we did, I borrowed a tuba from my old band.
Yep.
And but then maybe 10, 12 years later, they updated and it's the same. I mean, it's a very similar theme song, but it's a little shorter, a little bit tighter arrangement. And when I re-recorded it, I used that tuba. So that's the one you hear all the time now.
Nice. That's great. There's like for kind of there was talk about the songs wise. There are lots of wonderful classics that listen so much. Of course, you already mentioned the Hairbrush Song and other things. but his Cheeseburger got us bigger, of course. The very first show, and the Royal Buffalo song. There's so many wonderful, songs, and I mean, you did an amazing job,
Thank
arrange
you.
and scoring and all those things. I'm kind
You
of
know,
like,
I got one more little piece of trivia here talking about the tuba.
yeah.
When we kind of shut down the big office, and there were some layoffs, and I stopped being full time, but then the next day I was working freelance, so I was still writing all the shows. But I bought a lot of the studio into my space, and so this microphone, which is still my main microphone, this is the first microphone that Mike and Phil bought 30 years ago. That, I mean, every voice on every show for the first, I don't know, let's just say 10 shows came from this microphone. So
Wow.
I don't take it for granted that I'm, getting to enjoy those sorts of things.
That's great. Since we're kind of like talking about like, what I just talked to you about, music job, arrangements, everything you've done what we use for VeggieTales. I know there are people out there in the VeggieTales fandom are kind of like still even wondering about this. I want to ask you, what was the kind of like scoring and arranging for the music, kind of work, if that makes any
Okay.
sense?
Yes. So at the probably the most common way we were doing it is when I came on full time, I had my own little studio in our space, and it grew from a dozen people up to 150 people over time. And I would write, Mike or Phil would say, okay, we're going to need a song for this space in the show, because as they're writing the script, they know where they want to place a song, and they will write the lyrics to that. And then it could be a couple notes of a theme, it could be a whole song. Anywhere from A to B there, they would then sit down with me and sing it to me. Hey, I'm kind of thinking about this, kind of thinking about that.
Right.
Go,
So that way
okay,
they can have
I've got
their
that.
ideas and you can just do the music.
Oh yeah, because then I start with that, and then there's all sorts of permutations of, I might say, well, what if you did this, or this just feels like the other song. What if you change this up? And there's plenty of times where I would try to change things up, and Mike would say, nah, I kind of like what I started with better. And I go, okay. And later on, I learned, what, that was the best. I learned to just trust Mike's intuition. Sometimes I would think, well, I'm the trained musician here, but I'm like, but Mike and Phil have such just an internal sense of just a silly little easy to remember hook, and that's what they need. And so then I come in and frame that with all these nice different shapes and colors and things. So we go back and forth and back and forth. And the nice thing when you're in the office together is I can just call them over. Hey, what'd you think of this? These days when I'm writing in my own studio for whatever project, it's always like, okay, I wrote this. Now I'm going to bounce down an MP3 and email it to them. What do you think of this? And there's always, I don't want to say wasted time, but it's so nice when you're in the same building and, hey, I just got this little idea for starters. What do you think? Instead of, in my mind, I've got this little idea for starters. Now I'm going to create a song. And then they come in at that point and go, no, I didn't like that idea. I'm like, okay, now I got to start from A again. So it was really creative, just having everybody in the same space. That happened, in Chicago mostly. First at the Clinton Avenue in downtown Chicago, we had a floor there, and then later on we moved out to Lombard and we took over an old Woolworth Cinemall. But just to have that and it's not just me. There were so many incredible artists just wandering the halls, people from Disney and from other places like that. And people are just doodling. I have framed, actually, when I passed it, when I showed my hallway, Chuck Vollmer, one of my good friends who was a Disney artist, we always had a meeting in the mornings, and he would just doodle. And he was like, and he would use old paper grocery bags, so it gives us this real rough look, and just pencils on grocery paper bags. And he just drew this picture because this was when we were here in Franklin, Tennessee. He drew this random picture of a Confederate soldier. And he was just going to like throw it away. I'm like, no, no, no. And I've got it framed because I'm like, if this is what somebody like Chuck Ballmer can do in a meeting and he's just going to throw away, so that was part of the joy of this is just, I was hanging out with non-musicians that are at the top of their game as artists and storytellers and all these other things. So yeah, just being in a creative environment like that, just going back and forth. Hey, what do you think of that? What do you think of this? Making changes and then, then bouncing it down to go. Now, these days, because we just came off of, some people don't realize this, but TBN had us create 26 new episodes, 2 seasons worth of VeggieTales about 4 years ago. And unlike
the VeggieTales show, as I was talking about,
So, now this is not Netflix doing Veggies in the House. That had new faces, new everything, and a lot of people were turned off by that. Now, granted, some people say, "Oh, my kids love that." That was their first introduction to VeggieTales, so I'm not knocking that. But I didn't have anything musically to do with that. A lot of us creatively, they purposely, DreamWorks purposely brought in a fresh team to say, "No, we want to try to spice it up." So TBN came in and said, "We miss the old Veggies. Would you do a new season of Veggies?" So it's classic Veggies, except on a countertop. They're now in an old theater. It's kind of like the Muppet Show, where Bob takes over an old theater and he's got to produce a show each week. So it's the behind the scenes backstage, and then what do they put on the show? So we got to do that again, and these days with doing something like that, we're doing it a little more remotely. We're doing it a little more quickly, but I don't think the creativity suffered because, when the director or producer was saying, "Hey, we want it to sound like the classic VeggieTales shows," I'm like, I think I know how to do that. That's one thing I can do in my life is make something sound like classic VeggieTales. So I already knew the recipe. So I didn't have to rediscover anything at that point. It's like, nope, right what which is talking vegetables.
Nice.
Wonderful.
So in addition to like the episodes, you also got to compose for the VeggieTales films. We're talking Jonah and the Pirates Who Don't Do Anything. What was it like getting to work on the films?
That was incredible because it's legitimate. Like, I'm writing 70 minutes of score that's going to be played by a 60 or 80 piece orchestra. And so we had a little more time to do that. I would, more specifically, just because it's fresher in my mind, but when we were doing Pirates Who Don't Do Anything and Mike was directing that, I would write a minute of score a day, have Mike come in and listen to it and approve it. And then I would kind of fill it out and arrange it. And then it would go to an orchestrator who would basically make sure all the parts got transferred to sheet music that then would be played by a live orchestra. And then some of the songs were done the same way. There's some songs that feel like orchestral classical songs from Broadway or musical. Other songs we did more production, more pop production or rock, and occasionally we'd bring in another, a name artist for some of those, and that sort of thing. But just to be able to do that, and then it's like I felt like a legitimate composer because then we went to Seattle for the first one, recorded that with members of the Seattle Philharmonic, and then Pirates Who Don't Do Anything, we got to go to Prague, Czech Republic, spent 9 days there recording, and my daughter came along with me, and at night when we were done for the day, we'd wander around the city of Prague, just going and discovering things. But just to be able to sit and hear a full orchestra play your music is, it's amazing, and it is a different process. You have to take into account how I'm not just writing this for myself. When I'm writing for myself, I can just pick up a trumpet and play a line and nobody has to read the music after that. I'm done. You know, if I'm doing it for this, like, okay, now I've got to set a tempo. So there's a click, and I have to figure out what the melody sounds like so that the sheet music can be written for the trumpet player to eventually record it. So, but just to hear things come to life like that is amazing.
Nice.
Speaking of the
Absolutely love
Pirates
those
movie,
films.
yeah. Speaking of the Pirates movie, another interesting piece from the collection. This is the film trailer on 35 millimeter film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Where'd you
and
get
that's
that?
got I found it on eBay actually, and it's got the Reliant K cover of the Pirates Don't Do
Oh.
Anything, and I love Reliant K so much. Like
Nice.
that's one of my favorite bands ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, you can really tell by his collection. He can have some things saying like, "Whoa,
yeah.
how do you
Yeah,
get
well, I want to
that?"
see. Yeah, his whole bookshelf back there. Is that all copies of videos and
It
CDs, or
is.
what am I looking at?
I've got
Okay.
I've got about 500 VeggieTales videos back there.
We didn't
Around
make 500. We didn't make
Yeah.
500, so you have multiple
got
copies
quite
of
a
each.
few
I can
copies
see.
of some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have like the puppets up there too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the old puppets made in 1997 are up there.
Wow.
The latex
What?
ones.
I can
Wow.
still.
I didn't
I
even know
l-
they made puppets. That's really
Yep.
cool.
I'm trying to remember if those. I can literally feel the texture of Bob and Larry right now
Yeah.
because it's a little bit sticky. It's a little cold and clammy, and it's probably by now degrading a little bit.
A little bit, yeah, like around the mouths.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about this before, but one of my things that I feel pretty good about is from our very first live stage show, which Michael Curry created. He was the Tony Award winning guy that did the Lion King live stage show. He did the first VeggieTales stage show for us because he really liked us so much. But that is one of the P's from that stage
That's
show.
Incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's in great shape,
Nice.
except his what do you call the fur up there or
Yeah.
hair, that is starting to degrade because that's just literally like foam, and that's, if I touch it, it's gonna like disintegrate.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that's one of my one of a kind things that I have. I'm just looking around here to see if there's much of anything else. But yeah, I should show you when we have a chance down my hallway. I'll show you some more veggie stuff.
Oh, for sure. I've got so much VeggieTales stuff I can't even fit it all in this room. I've got around 700 items total.
I wish that I could go back, and because we had a little gift shop, right in our, and not even a gift shop. It was a closet, but it had all of the stuff. And I bought and acquired quite a few things, but there's more and more things that I was like, man, I wish I had thought to get this. Here's my, let's see, can I turn my picture around? I don't know if I can, but here's my little Pirates guys.
Oh yeah.
And and I've just
nice.
Where do I have? There's my little veggie drum.
That's awesome.
And I used to have the lights, the Bob and Larry lights, and that sort of stuff. Yeah, I've got several boxes of things in my garage that one of these days when the museum opens up, I'll dig that out. I used to be the one that collects, like I've got the like the very first advertisement that came out in a Christian magazine advertising VeggieTales.
Really? So the one with the toaster.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've got all of that sort of stuff sitting in boxes. I remember going to Moody Bible Bookstore in Chicago and finding that magazine and opening that up, because nobody knew who we were back then. So, and I'm a music director at a church, so to be able to open a magazine and see something that's published around the country was pretty stinking cool,
Yeah. So, so now aside from the movies, what was it like composing for LarryBoy the Cartoon Adventures?
Okay, so I did the LarryBoy shows, the 3D. I didn't.
Yeah, for the actual, VeggieTales
Yeah.
series. Yeah.
Yep,
Those
so
are
I
awesome
didn't-
too.
I didn't write on the 2D Larry. What was that called? LarryBoy Adventures.
Mhm.
So I didn't write the score for the 2D cartoon versions of those.
Hmm.
From what I remember, it's all a fog now. No, I didn't write for those. But I wrote all the main, Larry Boy and the Fib from Outer Space, which this is shirt as the Art Bugatti bowling shirt. Let's see,
There it
Art
is.
Bugatti's on the back there. Actually,
Yep.
I've got here we'll go down the hallway here. We've got so I'm upstairs, so I've got a hallway here or just a stairwell that comes up here. So here it is. There's an actual
Oh my
Art Bugatti
gosh.
bowling plate.
Oh wow.
Ah,
Yep.
cool.
Kev, do you have
That's
that?
awesome.
I do not.
Okay, thank you. I've got you beat at something.
Yeah.
And here's an old picture that one of our artists drew. That was the staff.
Cool.
Oh, I've seen that. That is
wow.
so
At that
cool.
point.
That is so cool.
And for that one, they handed a guitar to me. There's me playing
Oh,
the
there you
guitar.
go.
It
Nice.
has Bob and Larry in the bottom.
So
just
yep, and then there's Mike, Phil at the top, and Mike here.
that's great.
Yeah. So those are, and this was one of my proud moments. At one point when Billboard tracked everything, we had the top 2 children's audio
Wow.
at the same time, VeggieTunes and VeggieTunes 2. So I got that framed, and
That's awesome.
Nice.
because that's pretty cool, because technically we would have gold and platinum records for every
We'd
video
poster.
that we created.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but we didn't take the time to create all those. So, but that's what a gold record, which is for a video. So what do you call that? I don't know if it's a gold record or a gold what. Looks like that's an official.
Wow.
Oh, but here's we
Goodness.
did have there's my gold album from VeggieTunes. So pretty excited about that. Oh, and here's telling you about Chuck Lawmer drawing this Confederate soldier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he did that in like 10 minutes in a staff meeting.
I love
yeah,
Chuck's
here's an
work so
original-
much.
Original Larry Boy. There it is. The original Larry Boy, July 1999.
Wow.
Original
Yeah.
poster from there.
Wow.
And then let me turn on this light. And then a Pirates
Yep.
poster
That is
signed,
awesome.
Wow.
signed by
Wow.
everybody. So that was, I was busy with that.
That's
Wow.
wonderful.
And then our
That's so cool.
producer got these made for all the people that worked on Pirates who don't do anything.
Oh,
So-
nice.
And then here's
Yep.
when I left full time, one of our artists did an Andy Warhol version of Bob and Larry,
Ooh.
and then everybody
Oh my
signed it for me.
goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's this is the sort of stuff. This is Lilo and Stitch. So one of our artists, I won't mention his name so he doesn't get arrested. But one of our Disney artists, these, the artists would just, the storyboards that they didn't get used, they just throw them in the trash. And then they would go through each other's trash and collect the really cool stuff. So he and I bartered. So this is some hand-drawn storyboards for the Lilo and Stitch movie
Wow.
that came out of the garbage. But then this is the sort of this was for Yodeling Veterinarian of the Alps.
I
This
was
is the
wondering
sort
if
of-
you still had that. So
Wow.
cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
I
this
remember you
was,
mentioning that in the commentary.
Joe Sapulich, I believe, drew these. But this is our concept art for, what are the characters going to look like? And then up here we've got, there's his nurse's outfit.
Wow.
And then Jody Nielsen, when we used to have our not our magazine, our newsletter, she'd do a piece of art. There'd be a feature for each person each month, and she'd do an amazing caricature of them. So
Wow.
that's for
That's
that.
cool.
So yeah, so that's some of the stuff that I still have on display
That's
that I
great.
enjoy.
Wow.
So
That's
and my
wonderful.
studio, I've got it themed like a German pub. It's a little crazy in here. I mean, there's just instruments hanging everywhere because that way I just pick up instruments and play them, and I don't have to go get them out of a case and that sort of thing. So it feels very cluttered to some people, feels very warm and inviting to others.
That's wonderful.
All right, so
That's crazy.
back to the interview.
Yes.
That was the tour.
Oh, that's wonderful. So I'm kind of curious. So like of course, amazing, wonderful films for us. So now aside from the episodes, of course, you also contributed to the VeggieTales live shows, especially live on stage and Sing Yourself Silly and many others too. Can you talk a bit about those?
The actually we had Chris Davis did most of that production on those. I did, a lot of some of the projects outside of the videos. I was pretty involved in the Christmas CDs and all the compilations, and then I oversaw a lot of the other things. There was an Easter CD we did. There's some others, but some of the live shows actually I had very little to do with because I was always busy working on the next video or the next film, and we just didn't have time for that. Then me to jump over to this other project also. So actually, Chris Davis did a lot of those. He also did a lot of the, Bob and Larry sing country tunes, sing pop tunes, sing Bible stories. Right. So he was very involved in those, and he would come in and work with me on things. And he was hired freelance for that. But he's a Nashville guy here, did a great job on those. So actually, those live shows, I did see the opening show in Minneapolis.
Oh wow!
But and I remember going to some of them and helping with the final mix and that sort of stuff. But I didn't have as much. And then there was the show came to Nashville. I think it was the second tour, because they did like two completely different tours. Then I remember going to see it. But yeah, I didn't have a lot to do with those actually.
And that sort of leads into the next question I was going to ask about Chris Davis, because he did a lot of work for the sort of side VeggieTales projects, and I think did music for really. And he really nailed the sound of classic VeggieTales. Did you ever like sit down with him and sort of explain to him, go through what the sound is, or?
It was some of both. I mean, part of it, yes, there were different times that we talked about styles, and he did score on a couple shows. Again, when I was busy on a film, he scored one of the Christmas shows I was just watching. And so part of it was, hey, listen to what we've already done and mimic that. And he's a good enough musician and producer, and he's done enough of this that he knows exactly what that means. He's got a whole hard drives full of sample libraries, just like I do. And so he understands the assignment, so to speak. And then, there were times that we would work together on trying to nail down ideas. And there were some of the albums that he did, I would come in and, add some arrangements, here's a live brass section on a tune, and here's this or that. And so, there'd be some working together on that.
Nice.
That's wonderful. Of course, I wanted to ask you, because I feel like a lot of VeggieTales fans, especially, wondering like, would you like have you ever think that VeggieTales can like still has a huge following after all these years?
Yeah, we're finding out that it kind of never dies. It's like parents that, because we started 30 years ago, and so
like 30th
those
anniversary.
people
that's crazy.
Those people that grew up on it literally are having their children that they're introducing to VeggieTales now. And
that's just so heartwarming.
And it's fun to see because you don't know what sort of legs it's going to have. and they call that an evergreen project because it just keeps on going. But some little tidbits. I just had my kids threw me a 60th birthday party back in January, and our German band played for it, Good Bellows, and of course Mike and a bunch of the Big Idea folks were there. And so since we do the VeggieTales theme song, well, okay, here's an example. I'm in a German band. I didn't think, oh, we need to add the VeggieTales theme song because people are going to want that. I'm carrying around a two.
I mean, you and the rest did just for fun. You just want to have a fun project,
Well,
but then,
yeah. Here's the funny thing. I'm carrying around a tuba in Lederhosen, and I had multiple times, I'd say teenagers just yell out VeggieTales, and they don't even know who I am, and they see the tuba,
right?
Yeah.
They don't even know who I am. They see the tuba, and we're a goofy looking German band, and they just go VeggieTales.
And then they're like, "Oh my gosh, VeggieTales!"
And we said, I think we
And
need
then
to do.
it has a whole meme, like where if
Well,
someone's like dancing to other song, and then someone just put
yeah.
VeggieTales theme on there that
Well,
sounds on beat.
I think
or something.
the first
So
time
funny.
somebody yelled that out, I think we actually did the song just off the tops of our heads, and kind of crashed through it. I mean, I of course know the tuba part, but the other guys didn't know all the other parts. But then we decided, let's put it into our show, and as soon as I start the tuba part, bump, 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 there's somebody cheers in the audience because they know what's coming. And they don't know, we haven't introduced me yet, so they still don't know the connection. And so it's fun because then after the show, after the song is done, one of our other guys says, well, what you might not know is the actual tuba player and co-writer of that song is our own Kurt Heinecke. And then, so here's the crazy thing when you talk about popularity. So the German band, we did the VeggieTales theme song at my birthday party, and I called Mike up. Hey, Mike, come up and sing it with us. And he sang it, and my daughter got a videotape of it. And of course, now think about this. Mike never sings the theme song in the show because he's playing tuba, because he's Larry. So on the video feed, because we hadn't practiced it, I hadn't even told him we were going to do it. He misses one or two lines, and it's just so funny because like Laird the Cucumber is missing lines on the VeggieTales theme song. So my daughter posted that on her Instagram account, and this was in January, and it just hit a million views.
Wow. I saw that too. That was so great.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's whatever, thousands and tens of thousands likes and comments. And so it still lives on, and it's wonderful. It's neat to see that happening. And I'm very honored to be a part of that legacy, because I know that, I go and speak at a college campus, and more than once some geeky college kid comes up and goes, I'm playing tuba because of Larry the Cucumber. And
that's great.
So I know that is a legacy I'll have for the rest of my life, which is awesome. That's just something that I feel very honored to be a part of, and I always enjoy talking about it, and talking to people like you that don't have a life and you're still stuck on VeggieTales. And
yeah, I mean, VeggieTales.
Sadly true, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, VeggieTales is kind of such a simple, special show.
Yeah.
I mean, not just for of course, the show was kind of was all Christian and all, but it was more so different. But it makes the characters kind of like that like we're there too, and that Bob and Larry just want to talk to the camera. And that feels like we're there too. We're just part of adventure or something.
Well, a couple thoughts about that. VeggieTales came out. We were the first computer animated series ever produced in the country. We came out a couple of years before Toy Story. So there's that, just something fresh like that. You've got Mike and Phil, who never wrote, they didn't think of writing kids stuff. They said, what's going to make us laugh? Oh, let's put in some Monty Python humor. Let's put in a little bit of irreverence. Let's poke some fun at some things. And so then all of a sudden these adults go, oh my gosh, I get it. I can't believe they were joking about that. Or, it's like two levels of humor. Mike has always said that the most successful silly songs have a childlike humor to them, but they're dealing with an adult issue angst that adults have about something. Like the SUV song, it's saying, why do you need a sports utility vehicle when you're just going to the grocery store to get a dozen eggs? The irony of that, So all of that, and then the simple shapes and the simple music. We actually found a lot of special needs kids, or people with speech impediments, or this and that just latched on to Bob and Larry because we thought, okay, they're simple, round, brightly colored shapes, and they're simple to digest and take in. And so yeah, all around. And then you get the silly songs that's outside of your Christian friends, everybody's hearing about them. Oh, you gotta, that another thing. It's like, hey, let's do a silly song about absolutely nothing related to the show. Doesn't have to have any sort of spiritual theme to it. Let's just make up a silly song. And you go, well, how's that gonna, reach people for God? And you go, well, pretty cool when, kids are sharing it with their neighbors, and their neighbors are so like, oh, this is so fun, this is amazing. I don't feel like I'm being preached at. I'm not being hit over the head with what I should believe. And it just opens it up to so many people. And especially in today's world where there's so many divisions in, between religions and politics and so many things and so much infighting. It's like, yeah, I just miss those good old VeggieTales days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
So before we're kind of like moving forward to other things that you've done for your career, like Kev, is there anything you want to share to him?
Oh yeah. This just came in the other day. Hold on just a second. I've got to take my earbuds out to get to it.
I'm following you. I'm gonna get some water here while we're chatting.
Okay.
No worries.
Behind me as we walk back is my wall of Irish whistles and Native American flutes and ethnic flutes that I use.
Oh.
Huh.
I'm actually on 13 different Disney scores for theme park stuff like parades and Phantasmic Show, playing a bunch of those whistles.
Oh, Phantasmic's fun.
Oh yeah.
Phantasmic.
Yes. Love that.
A lot of times in a parade, if you hear the
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, something Jake wanted me to show was this CD that just came in today. I got Veggie Rocks finally.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
Where it has all the
also,
band, all the
Yes.
groups.
I also
kinda
got this
cover.
Oh, wow.
poster for it.
Nice.
This
Sweet.
poster that folds out.
And
of course,
oh,
we're
there's
like, hey, my beloved.
and then there's Rebecca St. James down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And here's a cool thing how this all comes full circle. She sang the theme song on it, and it's so funny. Don't tell Rebecca I said this, but when we got the CD to listen to everything, she was the only one I thought, well, that was, she kind of sang, if you like to. It's almost like she didn't quite get the joke in it. It was like, oh, that almost too seriously. Did I say that about Rebecca? Because I love Rebecca. My daughter and I always used to go to her shows, again, 25 years ago. And now her younger brother has just made the Unsung Hero movie, who, they are for King and Country. And I do photography on the side. And I just photographed that movie premiere this week. And I just got to say hi to the whole family because I know all of them
that's
now.
awesome.
Wow.
So it's just cool. So cool to see stuff like this. It's really a small world when you get down to it, down in Nashville.
Absolutely.
There's connections everywhere that everybody knows. That's why it's fun being down here. And I
And
love you,
her
Rebecca
in-
St. James.
Yeah. And her in Easter Carol singing Hope's song.
Oh,
that's
I
always
love-
like one of the most touching moments in all
She
of
did an
VeggieTales.
amazing job on that. That was an
Yeah.
awesome song for me to help. That was weird because I think I co-wrote that one, but I didn't do the production because Rebecca's team wanted their guy to do the production. It's got Rebecca. We want to make sure it sounds soundtrack. I could have done as good of a job, but I love her singing on that. Yeah, she sounds great on it.
Nice,
That's
nice.
wonderful.
So now moving on from VeggieTales, you also composed for another Big Idea production, which I also watched a lot as a kid, 3-2-1 Penguins.
Penguins.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, so what was it like working on that?
I had so much fun on Penguins. It was challenging because we were so busy trying to do two different shows at the same time, but it was really rewarding to completely create a different sound. Actually, two different sounds, because we had Ron Smith was directing it, and he had this vision of, remember the Little Rascals TV show?
Oh,
there
yeah.
was a band that played like Little Rascals music, and it was this little rinky dinky ding ding on all these acoustic instruments. And he said, that's what I want Grandmom's cottage to sound like. So we've got like a 10-piece little orchestra playing that. And then you get to space and the Penguins, you get you get the surf, rockabilly, 50s rock and roll, along with spacey synthesizers. So two completely different sounds that are completely different than VeggieTales. So it was a lot of fun to write and just kind of stretch. And I don't have any Penguins posters up right now, but my one thing that I still hang proudly is the Penguins premiere was at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And so I got to go there for the day, and I had to get my ID taken for the day. When is that? 2000. So there's my ID. There's my Penguins tag that I had to wear there, and my wife, and
cool.
And then here's my little lanyard, and then I got my little souvenir Saturn V rocket while I was down there. So I have all those hanging here because that was just such a cool trip. It's like, I'm going to Kennedy Space Center, and the viewing was in this room that has the mock-up of the Apollo 11 on the moon. And then there's a screen behind it. Yeah. So, oh, there's your poster. Oh, yes, that was from New Orleans, CBA, Christian Booksellers Convention. And the fact that we were premiering both of those at the same convention and had a big party. And who was the band there? Was it might have been Reliant K. It might have been one of the other ones.
It was Salvador.
Salvador, that's what it was. Yeah, we hired them for the premiere party.
Yeah.
Back in the day when CBA, Christian Booksellers Convention Association, was huge. There were mom and pop Christian bookstores around the country. And really, part of the success of us was because back then you had us on VHS, you had Barney, and there wasn't really much else.
Yeah.
Now you've got video games and computer games and 150
and
cable channels and streaming. Yeah. So it's very hard. It's very hard. I mean, it's hard to believe in today's world that we were coming out with 2, at the most, 3 episodes a year. And people were sitting around waiting for those, and they'd have big watch parties. Yeah. That would never happen these days. Like, where's my full season released overnight, so you can binge watch it. And so it's really hard these days with anything to say, how do I successfully create a franchise that is good, but successful and makes money. There's just so many options out there that it's very hard to do.
Yeah. I'm sorry to be obnoxious and keep pulling random collection things out.
No worries,
but, speaking of Penguins, and I'm going to try not to show my address here, but Tim Hodge sent me this.
Oh, Tim is awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
I am looking at a birthday card that Tim hand drew for me, because he's just that kind of guy, and he's an amazing artist.
Oh, that's so cool. I love Tim.
He's so talented.
That's nice.
He's a great guy. We've been friends for decades.
Nice.
Oh, that's great. So now you also scored 5 seasons of the CBN series Superbook. we did
Yes.
kind of mention in your introduction. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Tom Bancroft, who came from Disney and was one of our animators, was key to helping develop Superbook, and he was one of the ones that suggested, hey, you should consider Kurt writing the score for this. And they're kind of like, well, isn't he the VeggieTales guy that does like tuba and accordion? Which is, that's not the last time that I've been accused of that. And they're like, no, trust me, he does bigger stuff too. Look at, listen to the movies and that sort of stuff. So I got involved in CBN and did Superbook, which is very exciting. First of all, it was a wonderful timing because it's when things started slowing down at VeggieTales, and I took on Superbook, and those 5 seasons, that was 11 years that I worked on it. Not full time, but good chunks of 11 years. And again, it was probably the first series that came out after VeggieTales that I felt like, okay, this is really well done. They actually have some budget. They can actually do some study and design work and research and do a really good job on this. And it's completely different, absolutely as far from VeggieTales as you can get. It's legit storytelling, Bible stories. But the cool thing is, you think about, it's got, a talking robot, Gizmo, and it's got time travel through a Bible, and it's got animation. The reason for that is the very, and some people don't realize this, but there was a Superbook series back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And it was made by the same animation company that did Speed Racer. So it's got that real kind of fast, jerky 2D
Right.
animation. Yeah. But the reason they did that is they CBN was trying to figure out some sort of children's entertainment that would help introduce the Japanese culture to the Bible and Bible stories. And they said, what do kids in Japanese culture like? They like time travel, they like robots, and they like animation. And so they tied those together into this amazing storyline, so that now these kids are modern day kids, and they time travel back into time to experience a Bible story firsthand. And Gizmo, this robot, he's kind of comedic, he's kind of humorous, but he's part of the narration and helps them travel through time to experience these Bible stories and then see how it relates to their experience today. They're dealing with some issue today, and that helps them. So, because for me, that was really heavy duty scoring. It's like, no, this has to sound like a big film score, very dramatic moments, Old Testament stories that are very big, epic. And so, I really had to concentrate on my big sound libraries and, pulling out I used a lot of trumpet, a lot of my whistles, because a lot of Irish whistles and ethnic flutes, they sound very Middle Eastern. So I would use a lot of these live instruments on top of all my layers of scoring. So that was very cool to be involved in that. And there's a chance that there might be some future stuff with CBN.
Ooh,
cool.
We'll see. We're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But those are CBN. Those are all available either on the CBN app or streaming through CBN. I don't know if they're on any other, network sort of streaming at this point, but absolutely, you can look up CBN Superbook and you'll figure out a way to see, because there's, like we said, 5 seasons, 13 episodes each. So
yeah,
it covers a whole lot of Bible stories.
Nice. So
awesome.
you also worked on projects for Sesame Workshop and Blizzard Entertainment. Can you talk about your work with them?
Yeah, those were I've got a friend who works at Blizzard Entertainment, which is one of the largest gaming companies in the world, and we made a connection, and they gave me the opportunity to write, not for a video game, but for one of the projects that was like, okay, we're going to introduce some new characters online on YouTube that are tied in with one of our stories. And so they let me write some for that, and it was a great experience. In the end, they went a different route. So actually I don't think you'll hear I can't point you to my music because I don't know if it ended up appearing anywhere. But I've toured their studios out in California. Very cool. Met with their main film composer and music guy. So that was a really cool experience. Sesame Workshop is the team that made Sesame Street. I wrote on a pilot animated a story that was a pilot for an animated series there. That was something that they were doing. I don't remember if that was something they were going to pitch to somebody and then hopefully get it picked up. But I worked with an animation company here in Nashville on that. Again, it's kind of a one-off. It's like one thing I did, but it's even something like that is really exciting because it's top of the line when it comes to expectations and budget and the time they have to work with it and really setting the bar high. And so I really have to push myself. And anytime you do that for a new company, they're looking for a completely different sound maybe than what I've done with these other projects. So it's always a good way to stretch myself.
Nice.
Very nice. So you also wrote songs and score for the video series Dead Sea Squirrels with Mike Malraki. What was it like working on him with that?
Well, okay, so this keep your ears open because nothing's been, there's been trailers and there's been some things released, but that is hopefully something that we get distributed this year, and you'll have a chance to, whether it's stream it or buy it or download it. It's a hilarious, and I'm not just saying that, but it's just Mike writing like Mike writes, which is great. It's multi-layered. It's about the synopsis is there's an archaeological family who is studying. They're finding the scrolls that were in the caves around the Dead Sea, and so the dad is there studying those, and his son, the 5th grade son, is off lurking in the caves by himself and discovers 2 petrified squirrels like standing in one of the caves, and he thinks that's so cool, so he sneaks them home in his backpack back to the United States. Well, they're stinking up his backpack, and because they're petrified, so he sets them on his shelf in front of his window. He opens his bedroom window to get some fresh air, and that night a big storm comes in and it gets the squirrels wet. Well, they weren't petrified, they were dehydrated because they were at the Dead Sea. It's so salty. Well, the water from the rain rehydrates them. They come back to life, and now he has 2 talking squirrels hiding in his bedroom. And it turns out they've been petrified since Jesus's time. They actually were alive at the time of Jesus. So he's trying to keep them hidden from his family, and he carries them around in his backpack. And he's dealing with 5th grade problems at school, and they're telling him, well, when we heard Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount, here's what he said about turning the other cheek or whatever. So he's kind of learning lessons that way. But then the plot thickens because they're talking squirrels. Somebody wants to kidnap them and because they're unique, and bring them back to Israel and Jerusalem. And they do. They get taken back. And so now they're on a manhunt or a squirrel hunt to find these squirrels again. So they're traveling around Israel trying to find the squirrels. And in the meantime, they're visiting different sites where Jesus had his ministry. So we're seeing and hearing about, oh, here we're at the Dead Sea, and this is what happened here. But it's all comical. It's just like vegetables saying, hey, we're going to tell Bible stories with talking vegetables that have no clothes or arms or legs. And you go, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Same thing here. Hey, we're going to introduce you to the Bible through 2 talking squirrels that lived during Jesus's time. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Exactly. It's very funny. It's just really creative humor. And so, yeah, we've got 13 episodes written. The cool thing is Steve Taylor is the executive producer, co-executive producer with Mike. He was a huge Christian music star, whatever you want to say, artist, back 20, 30 years ago. And he's still plugged into that whole industry. So we've got a bunch of Christian artists that are speaking some of the roles. and you'll know a bunch of them. And I'm not going to mention who they are because I don't even know if I can. But getting to work with people like Matthew West, who I can't mention his name, but I got to work with Matthew West on one of the parts, and Mac Powell from Third Day, and I won't mention any other names, but names like that are on this series, and it's going to be a hoot when it comes out. So keep your eyes
Yes, very
peeled
excited.
and
Very
support
excited.
us. And then I got to
very
write
looking forward to it.
both. I wrote all the score, and then I wrote half the songs. Again, every show has a really funny song in it. I wrote half the songs with Mike, and then Steve Taylor wrote half the songs with us also. So, I mean, it's just really cool. It's like I got to write with Steve Taylor and write for people like Matthew West, and, get to work with Mike again. It just feels great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm happy for Mike, one of those things that he's doing now, of course, after his days on Veggies, now, doing that Sea Squirrels, I think that's great. I'm very, very looking forward to the series whenever it drops.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now, as we mentioned earlier, you're also in the Good Bellows, the polka band. How did that sort of come about?
I wouldn't put it at the same level of all these other things we've talked about. But
the worst band in Nashville, as I've heard.
WURST. Yeah, we pretty much, because we all started it. It's four of us that are all friends of mine, and it's like, what are we thinking? But it's tuba, accordion, clarinet, banjo. But then all of us sing, and all of us play 2 or 3 instruments. So it's just this hodgepodge of the misfit instruments of the band, and so we just started that a couple of years ago. I've got a German background. I've played in German bands before, and we just started having fun with it. And probably the most fun we have is we do stuff like we'll do a German polka, but then we'll break right into YMCA, young man, and
that's wonderful.
Yeah, and so we do, and then we do a couple Beatles tunes, but we do them in a German band style, which nobody's ever heard before.
Wow.
So 40% of our songs aren't even German songs. We do a lot of classics, standards like Country Roads and Rocky Top, and and the funny thing is, we just played last month. We opened for David Phelps, who is like yeah, Gaither used to be in the Gaither group, one of the world's best tenors. He's got a farm in this area, and he does a couple concerts there every year. I still haven't figured out how he heard of us. Like, you realize you're hiring a German band to open for you, but the crowd loved it because they didn't know what to expect. We walk out in Lederhosen, and they're like, "What is this?" And then we break into a Beatles tune, and then we do VeggieTales, and they're going crazy. So. And then we just this weekend we just did a big German club up in Louisville, Kentucky, and again they just ate it up because when you're just playing a standard polka, and then you immediately turn right around and do Rocky Top and Green Acres and YMCA and celebrate good times come out and with the tuba, it's just kind of crazy. So we're having fun with it. I'm not going to retire from my, all the money I'm making as a German band member, but it's a good way to, again, stay out of trouble,
Yeah,
absolutely. So of course, over the years, aside from working in the music field, you also have a career in photography. How did that come into play?
Yeah, I've always kind of had a interest in photography. I've always enjoyed it, and it was probably in the last 15 years that actually about 20 years ago, I started photographing some air shows up in Chicago. And feel free to, if you want to post my website anywhere there, it's khstudios.biz, as in Kurt Heinecke Studios.biz, B-I-Z. I've got a lot of photos up there. Just fell in love with photography. And then over time, I was like, you know what? Actually, the way it kind of happened was started moving down here to Nashville, I knew so many artists, and I just say, "Hey, can I photograph your concert?" Sure. And then, I got some pretty good photographs out of them, and then would give them to the artist. And then the door would open. They're like, "Man, we love those so much. Could you come back and we'll pay you next time?" And so I started photographing, a lot of top Christian artists and some country artists, and then kind of built up a portfolio, and just kind of word spreads. And then it just picked up from there. And then I just, I sought out somebody that was a wedding photographer and learned wedding photography from him. And
That's wonderful.
And now I shoot with TBN, which is Trinity Broadcasting Network, and almost every Dove Award or Kayla Fan Award, I'm one of the photographers there. And I just photographed the King and Country, their movie premiere, Unsung Hero. And the fun thing for me is that I know all these guys anyways, just from being in the industry. So it's just another fun way to connect with friends and acquaintances, and offer something as a photographer that they need. They need pictures from their concerts or from their events, and all those sorts of things. So it's been a fun. I mean, I want to say side project, but some years it's 30 to 40% of my income. So it really, as a freelancer, even though you'd think, "Oh, I'm set," it's like, no, it's, VeggieTales was hugely successful, but it's not like, "Ooh, I'm a millionaire from that." So I'm like the next guy looking for the next job. And there's a lot of freelancers down here, which is cool, because we all can kind of work together and commiserate together about, what it's like to be a freelancer. You don't know where your next job's coming from. And so photography has been a great balance to the music side for me.
Nice. And so, in addition to composition and photography, you've also gone to various colleges talking about the music industry. What's that like?
Yeah, there was one year when I was writing on Superbook that we had a slower year, and I was like, I need to do something more. And I decided, because I've got an educational background and I enjoy talking to kids about music, I thought, you know what if I just reach out to a lot of private colleges in the country? Not a lot, I mean, a couple dozen. And there were quite a few that, especially in the middle of South Dakota. Here in Nashville, it's like, oh, you can go experience music all around you. If there's a college in South Dakota that's teaching composition and film scoring, I was able to walk into there and spend a day with them and say, this is what it's really like. Here's the things you need to be ready for, and here's what you didn't even think about. And I love doing that. So I love that opportunity. I've been so busy lately, I haven't been able to do it. But this next year, I've thought about trying to do it some more. My wife and I want to start. My goal is to buy a travel trailer, set up a little workstation in it so I can do a little writing, and go tour around the country a little bit and visit some family that's in other parts of the country. And I thought, ooh, if I'm in a different state, I should reach out to the schools there and just say, hey, I'm in your area. You want me to come speak to your kids? So I love doing that. It's part of me, the teacher part of me that I used to get to do more of, that I enjoy doing.
Nice.
Very cool. So as we're getting close to wrapping up here, can you share any projects that you're currently working on that you're allowed to share, of course?
Let's see. Yeah, I can. If you've seen the movie Jesus Revolution, that tells the story of Greg Laurie, the pastor in California, pastor and evangelist, who was always doodling and making drawings of, his surf buddies and a character that, well, he is bringing some of those characters to life, and he's actually creating a little animated series. And he just released his first 5 or 7 minute show about that. And it's called no, I'm gonna embarrass myself. Ben Born Again, and then he's got his dog, his little yellow dog.
I saw an ad for that the other day, actually.
Yeah. So that I'm actually writing the score on that. And it's been a ton of fun because Ben, Born Again, and Yellow Dog. It's been a ton of fun because he's got this like surf California Beach Boys mentality for, I want it just to be fun and kind of feel like, hippies and surf and stuff. So I've got here's one of the cool things about living in Nashville that I enjoy. I don't play guitar, so that's one of the instruments that I can't play. So we go, well, we need somebody going ding 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 ding. So one of my buddies goes to my church, and he's the guitarist for Toby Mac. And and so when he's not on the road, he records those guitar parts for me, and so we get to work on that together. So that's a little project I'm working on right now. I'm also working. Actually, we haven't. Not that we're going to spend a bunch of time on it, but Andrew Peterson's Wing Feather Saga. I've been working on that the last 3 years, and we just finished season 2, and we're actually working on getting funding for season 3. But season 2 literally is releasing right now, and so that's been awesome because I'm working with Andrew Peterson, who's an incredible songwriter, working with this incredible kind of alternative bluegrass group called Arcadian Wild, because they write some of the songs, I write some of the score, we work together, we collaborate. Ben Shive is on it, who's an incredible producer. He's Andrew's producer. So that's been really fun because it's this new mixture of sounds that we're trying to blend together that we've never done before and create this real fresh sound for the Wing Feather series. So that's the big one out right now that you can go and watch right now, and that's a little more intense. That's not for the youngest of the VeggieTales crowd, but it's probably middle school kids are getting into it. It's a lot more Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, grand stories of good and evil families versus oppression and those sorts of things. So it's got some really cool stuff and some pretty intense stuff, but kids are loving it.
Nice.
That's wonderful.
Nice.
That's good to hear.
Nice. So the last question that our guest co-host here, Kev, is going to ask is a question we ask all of our guests at the end. Go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, so this podcast being called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. What do you, when you think of nostalgia, what do you think of, or how would you define the word nostalgia?
Oh, nostalgia. Well, obviously it's bringing back old memories. For me, I'd say that means growing up in elementary school in Wisconsin with my 2 older brothers and my parents when all of us were, they hadn't left for college yet. And, there's things like camping trips, there's things like Christmases spent together that are the kind of the definitive happy memories of childhood when, all was right in the world. And I know that, not every person can say that because my family situation was different than others. But that's definitely nostalgic, gatherings like that. Ironically, we would, German background, we would sing German Christmas carols around the piano on Christmas Eve, which I didn't know what any of that meant. But, if you listen to the VeggieTales First Christmas CD, you've got songs like Ring Little Bells, Cling, Cling, Cling.
And VeggieTales did some like a Christmas
Cling.
videos, like the Christmas Star. Love that one too.
So that's
Love
a song that's nostalgic.
Yeah.
That's nostalgic.
I mean, I know a lot of
that's
VeggieTales fans will. I know a lot of VeggieTales fans will probably watch that V even just for a Christmas tradition. Like seriously.
So and now we've got 3 grown kids and a grandson and a grandchild on the way, and now I'm thinking of, okay, what can I do for my kids and my grandkids to create lasting memories, and that sort of stuff. I mean, hopefully I've already done it with my kids, but now that we're getting grandkids, it's like, ooh, okay, I want to take them camping because those were some of my best memories and those sorts of things, because I remember that from my childhood, and that's good nostalgia for me. And I want to create the same memories for my grandkids and kids.
That's wrong.
Nice. Great word to end on.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, Kurt, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
thank you
cool.
so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
once you
very
get it
much.
edited or whatever, send me a link so I can
Yeah, absolutely.
watch it
I will
and
do
post it
that.
on my website or whatever.
Thank you
Nice.
very much, Kurt. It means a lot.
This was cool. Thanks for
yes.
the memories. Thanks for
Yeah.
taking me back. And
Yeah, of course. And
yeah, and
Pleasure. Thank you.
give me a shout if you're in Nashville and all.
yeah,
know?
absolutely. And of course,
Definitely.
thank
Will
you so
do.
much for what you've done over the years. Thank you so much, for taking the time to chat with us for the show. For what you've done, your involvement with Big Idea, especially VeggieTales and all the things you've done. For what you've done is just absolutely amazing. I know so many people in the VeggieTales fan will say the same thing. So thank you very much for what you've done. And I cannot wait for what's next in store, and cannot looking forward of what you're doing now whenever it's released, and keep up the great work. What are you doing now?
Awesome. Thank you. Good to meet all of you.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
good
know
to meet you
that-
too.
Thank
It
you.
means a lot.
I know we'll bump into each other again. So
Yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
yes,
Sure.
All right.
absolutely.
remember,
Will
God
do.
made you special. He loves you very much.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Kurt.
Yes. Great words
Thanks,
said
Kurt.
on. Keep in touch,
Take
Kurt.
care. Bye.
Bye. It's goodbye from us.
Wow.
We absolutely enjoyed our time with Kurt Heinecke. His website and social media will be in the description down below for people to connect. And Kev,
Or
thank
check
you so
out
much.
whatever other things.
Yeah, thank you for
Kurt's
having me
doing.
on.
Yes,
Pleasure
it's
having
such
you.
a
Come back
pleasure
anytime.
having you, Kev. Yes, it's such amazing to have you as a guest host. It's been a bit since we last time have a guest host. I think
Yeah.
for you for this particular episode, I think it's great for
Oh, yeah.
for this episode. So thanks so much for you
Well, I
for
appreciate
this,
it.
Kev.
Yes,
Means a lot.
keep on the lookout for more wonderful interviews coming your way. And as always, what do we say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Take care.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview. Be sure to follow Jake and the crew on social media and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.